The next day, as Van arrived at college, she immediately noticed something was off. Group of students huddled together in corners, whispering to each other while sneaking glances at her. She walked through the crowd, feeling the weight of their stares, but she didn't understand why. Confused, she stopped in front of a girl who seemed to know something. Van, hey, what's going on? Why is everyone acting so strange today? The girl hesitated for a moment, looking at Van as if she was surprised she didn't know. Then, leaning in closer, she lowered her voice to whisper, as though sharing a secret. Girl, you didn't hear. Taehyung has been rusticated. He's no longer a student here, she says in a hushed tone. Vian's eyes widened for a moment in shock, but she quickly composed herself, her face neutral as she processed the information. Her heart raced as she tried to make sense of it. She turned away from the girl, her mind racing with questions. Van, rusticated just like that, she whispers to herself. As she walked through the hallway, more whispers followed her. Student 1, I can't believe it. Taeyang has been kicked out. I wonder what he did. Student 2, no clue, but it must have been serious. You don't just get expelled like that without a good reason. Vine felt their words echo in her head, but she already knew the reason. Her lips curved into a small knowing smile. There was no doubt in her mind about who was behind this. Vine, Jungkook. This is your doing, isn't it? She thought back to everything that had happened, the photos, the misunderstanding, and Jungkook's cold demeanor. But this was something else. A part of her felt a strange sense of satisfaction, knowing that even though he acted like he didn't care, Jungkook still couldn't bear to see her with someone else. He was the reason Taeyang was gone. She couldn't help but feel that, despite everything, Jungkook still loved her. There was no other reason for him to go to such lengths to remove Taeyang from her life. Why? So he still loves me, even after all this. He can't stand the thought of me with anyone else. Thinking her smile fading a bit, there was no guilt in her heart for what had happened to Taeyang after everything he had done, especially that night when he crossed the line. She felt no sympathy. In fact, a part of her believed this was what he deserved. Wine. He brought this on himself. I have no reason to feel bad for him, murmuring softly, her voice determined. As she walked away, her heart was heavy with the realization that Jungkook's love hadn't disappeared, even if he pretended it had. The small smile stayed on her lips as she understood that no matter how hard he tried to push her away, his action proved that deep down he still cared. Van watched from a distance as Jungkook's car pulled up on campus. Her eyes narrowed when the passenger door swung open and Anna stepped out, immediately heading towards Jungkook with a bright smile. Van's fist clenched at her side. Van gained confidence after seeing Jungkook still loved her. And she wasn't going to let anyone ruin this. Van, I need to get that leech off my man. She mutters to herself, frustrated. Her heart pounded in her chest as she strode towards them, not caring who was watching. As she reached them, Anna was clinging to Jungkook's arm, smiling up at him, completely unaware of Van's presence. But Van had enough. Without thinking, Van grabbed Anna by the arm and shoved her away from Jungkook, making her stumble back a step. Anna, who was shocked by Van's sudden move, she yelled, Anna, what do you think you are doing? Van didn't even flinch. Her eyes were cold as she glared at Anna. Her finger pointed directly at her. Van, don't you dare cling to my fiancé, she said firmly. Anna scoffs, crossing her arm. Anna, fiancé. Haven't you two broken off? Isn't it over between you and Jungkook? Van smirked, not backing down for a second. She raised her chin confidently and stepped closer to Anna, closing the distance between them. Van. And who told you that? Did Jungkook say it? Did you hear him break off the engagement with your own ears? Anna's face turned red, clearly flustered by Van's words. She stammered, unable to come up with a response, as she looked between Van and Jungkook. Anna, no, but before she could finish her sentence, Van cut her off, not giving her a chance to explain, and questions her with authority. Van, no, then stop assuming things. If Jungkook didn't say it, then you shouldn't be clinging to someone else's fiance. Vine turned her back to Anna and moved closer to Jungkook, her hand resting on his arms as she looked up at him possessively. She whispers confidently with a smile, Vine, John Jungkook is my man, and he always will be. Got it? He's just a little mad at me, but he can't live without his Vine. Anna's face fell as she realized she had no real argument. She glanced at Jungkook, hoping for some kind of support, but Jungkook remained silent, his cold demeanor unchanged. He stood there not saying a word as he watched Ayan with an unreadable expression, though he didn't stop her from claiming him. Jungkook's POV. Jungkook's mind was in a whirlwind. He was still angry with Van for everything that had happened, but at the same time, he couldn't deny that he liked the way she was standing up for him, claiming him in front of everyone. His heart beat a little faster as he felt Van holding on to him. But his face remained cold, refusing to show any emotions. End of Jungkook's POV. Anna stammers, flustered by the sudden information. Anna, but Vine turned to look at her again, her gaze sharp as she delivered her final words. Vine, you heard me, Anna. Jungkook is mine. He always has been, and he always will be, she said with a smirk. Anna didn't know what else to say. She stood there for a moment, her lips pressed into a thin line, before she huffed and stormed off, clearly upset. Jungkook, still maintaining his cold face, didn't move as Van stayed close to him. Though he was furious with her, a part of him felt a sense of satisfaction watching her stand up for their relationship, but he wasn't going to let her see that just yet. Vine took a deep breath, her heart steadying as she watched Anna walk away. A new sense of determination filled her. She wasn't going to stand by and watch someone else try to take Jungkook from her. No more tears, no more backing down. She was going to fight for him, just like he had always fought for their relationship. Van, I'm not giving up this time. He fought for us once, and now it's my turn. She mutters to herself. She looked up at Jungkook, who was still standing there with a cold expression, but she could see through it. She could feel it, no matter how much he tried to hide it. She knew, deep down, that he still cared. That was all the motivation she needed. Ryan, I'm not going anywhere, Jungkook. You can be angry with me, you can try to push me away, but I'm not giving up on us, she says confidently. Jungkook glanced at her, his face still hard, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. She knew she'd struck a chord, even if he wouldn't admit it. Jungkook, you think this will change anything? Van smiled softly, stepping closer to him. Van replies determined. Van, I don't just think it, I know it. I know you still love me, and I'm going to prove to you that I'm not giving up on us, no matter what. Jungkook's jaw clenched, but he didn't respond. Van could see the battle he was fighting within himself, but she wasn't going to let him retreat into his walls anymore. She wasn't going to cry or feel defeated. She was going to stand by his side, no matter how hard it got. Van, you are mine, Jungkook, and I am going to fight for you, for us, like once you did. I won't let anyone else come between us again, she said firmly. Jungkook said nothing, but Van didn't need his words. She could see the conflict in his eyes, and she knew that deep down he wasn't as indifferent as he pretended to be. Van wasn't going to back down this time. She was going to fight for their love with everything she had. Jungkook, are you doing all this just to get Taehyung back? He said, gritting his teeth. Van immediately shook her head, stepping closer to him, her eyes wide and sincere. Van, why would I? I don't care about Taehyung. I am doing this because I want my man to forgive me. His tense muscle visibly calmed down, hearing her response. She wrapped her arms around him, leaning in closer as she spoke softly, a playful smile tugging at her lips. She teasingly whispers, Vant, I want you to be the softy you used to be for me, not this cold hearted guy you're pretending to be. Jungkook stayed still, not saying a word. His jaw was clenched and his body was stiff, but he didn't push her. Vine took it as a small victory, her heart racing with hope. She kept her arms around him, holding him close, knowing she had to be patient with him. The tension between them was thick, but she could feel his walls slowly starting to crack. As the day went on, Vine made sure to stay close to him. She wasn't going to give him space to retreat into his cold demeanor. She started flirting with him, gently teasing him, trying to break through his defenses. Leaning against his arm, smoking, she whispers, Van, you know Jungkook. You can act all tough, but I know you miss me. I bet you secretly liked me calling you mine earlier. Jungkook didn't respond. His expression was still hard, but Van noticed the subtle twitch at the corner of his mouth. She smirked, knowing she was getting to him. Brian, you don't have to say anything. I can read you like a book, she said playfully. She lightly poked his arms, trying to get a reaction out of him. Brian, you used to smile more when I was around. I miss that smile. It was my favorite thing about you, she said, pouting. Jungkook rolled his eyes, clearly trying to keep up his cold front, but Van wasn't giving up. She leaned in closer, her lips almost brushing his ears, as she whispered teasingly, Van, I bet you can't mad at me forever. Deep down, you still love me. He said with a playful tone. This time, Jungkook's stoic mask cracked just a little. He turned his head slightly, his eyes meeting hers for a brief moment. There was a flicker of something, maybe frustration, maybe affection, but it was enough for Van to know she was getting through him. Throughout the day, Van continued her playful advances. She stayed glued to his side, making sure he couldn't escape her. She lightly teased him about everything, from his serious face to how she knew he was trying hard not to smile. Van, wow, you're so serious today. It's almost like you don't enjoy having your gorgeous fiance around. She grinned as she caught him glancing at her when he thought she wasn't looking. Van, I saw that. Jungkook, you looked at me. You can't hide it forever. You know, she fittingly whispers. Jungkook exhaled sharply, but he still said nothing. Yet, Van could see the subtle softening in his expression, and it gave her the encouragement to keep going. She wasn't going to stop until she got him to crack. By the end of the day, Van had wrapped her arms around him again, her cheek resting on his shoulder. Van, I'm not giving up on us, Jungkook. No matter how much you try to act like you don't care, I know you do, and I'll wait for you to admit it. She whispers softly. Jungkook still didn't push her away. His silence was all the confirmation Van needed. He was listening, and he was slowly letting her in again. The next day, Van was determined to take things even further. She wasn't just going to flirt, she was going to pamper him, break down his cold front, and make him remember what they used to have. As soon as she spotted Jungkook on campus, she wasted no time. Ryan, oh look who's here. My favorite person, she said with a cheeky grin. Jungkook barely glanced at her, his expression still hard and unreadable. She stayed by his side, walking with him as if it were the most natural thing in the world. When they reached the cafeteria, she hurried ahead and with a dramatic flourish pulled out a chair for him. Van, here you go, sir. Your seat is ready, she whispers playfully. Jungkook stared at her, his brow knitting together in confusion. But he said nothing. He sat down without acknowledging her, keeping his usual icy demeanor. But Van knew him too well. She could see the small cracks forming in his walls. Van took it upon herself to get him lunch. She walked over to the counter, picked out his favorite dishes, and brought the tray back to the table. She set it down in front of him. Her smile never faded. Van, I brought you your favorite. Jungkook didn't say anything, but Van could see the subtle tension in his posture. His eyes flickered towards the food, then back to her, but he remained silent, as if he were determined not to let her get to him. Van wasn't about to let him stay cold for long. She sat down across from him, her chin resting in her hand as she watched him, her eyes full of playful energy. Van, you know you can act tough all you want, but I know you missed me. You probably think about me all the time, right? She teases Jungkook, exhaled sharply, his eyes narrowing, but Van got the slightest twitch of his lips, as if he were trying to suppress a smile. She took that as her cue to push further. She leaned across the table, her voice lowering to a seductive whisper. Van, admit it, you miss me, she said softly. Jungkook's grip on his fork tightened, his jaw clenching as he stared down at his food, trying to ignore her. But Van wasn't going to let him off that easily. She reached out and gently brushed her fingers against his hand, sending a shiver through him. His eyes flickered up to meet hers, and for a moment she saw a flash of emotion, something deeper than the cold mask he was trying to keep up. Van, there it is. I knew you'd look at me eventually, she said, smiling. Jungkook immediately dropped his gaze again, his face hardening, but Van could see the effect she was having on him. She leaned back in her chair, a satisfying smile on her lips. Van, you are not as tough as you think, Jungkook. I know you still care. You wouldn't be this quiet if you didn't. She grabbed a napkin and handed it to him with a wink. Fine, don't worry. I won't make you admit it just yet, but you'll crack soon. I'm pretty irresistible, you know. And I'm also aware about all your weak spots, and I'm not afraid to use them. Jungkook exhaled again, clearly trying to stay composed, but Van could see that her flirting was working. She wasn't going to stop until he gave her the reaction she wanted. Later, as they walked out of the cafeteria, Van stuck close to his side, constantly brushing against him. She knew he was trying his best to stay indifferent, but the way his eyes occasionally glanced her way told her everything she needed to know. As they walked down the hall, Van leaned closer and whispered into his ear, Vine, I can see through you, Jungkook. You're still my softy inside, aren't you? You miss having me by your side. Jungkook's body stiffened, and for a moment he looked like he was going to respond, but instead he clenched his jaw and kept walking. Van grinned, knowing she was slowly breaking through. She said playfully, wrapping her arms around his. Van, it's okay. You don't have to say anything. I know you'll come around. She stayed glued to him for the rest of the day,
occasionally brushing her hands against his arm, leaning close to whisper teasing comments, and throwing playful looks his way. Every now and then she caught him looking at her, a flicker of warmth in his eyes, before he quickly looked away. As the day went on, Van's confidence grew. She knew Jungkook wasn't pushing her away because deep down he still cared. He could act all tough, but she wasn't going to stop until he softened up again. Ryan, you know Jungkook. I think you're enjoying this. You're just pretending to be mad. Jungkook didn't respond, but Ryan knew she was getting closer to breaking down his wall. She wasn't going to give up, not until he was hers again. To be continued.
Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.